Hello, you're right. Today we're going to be looking at factorising. So if you have that for today's title, and let's go. Before we do, I want to do one last little bit of practice on what we looked at yesterday, expanding and simplifying brackets. So let's just talk through the first couple as a reminder. When you've got brackets like this, what we want to do is expand them first, so multiply them out, and then we want to collect those terms together. So if I was doing A here, I'd say W times W is W squared plus 5W, and then the second one I'd have plus another W squared plus 7W. I'd then need to simplify that together by collecting my like terms. So I've got W squared and another W squared is 2W squared, and I'd have 5W and 7W is 12W. So that's what we need to do, okay? So pause the video now, have a go. When you're done, unpause for the answers. Which are going to be up in 3, 2. So there's the first couple. I really do want to point out this thing in particular. A lot of people will be writing this as a minus n squared because it's they'll just do n times minus n, but it is actually minus n times minus n, so we get a plus n squared out of that. Okay, rest of the answers in 3, 2. There's the next 3. Something that people will get wrong here is that they'll want to combine things like 2AC and 2C together on question E, and they'll want to combine maybe some of the things on part F. It's okay for there to be no like terms for you to combine something with, so here we just had a plus 2C, there's nothing else to put with it, so we end up with just plus 2C. Okay, last 3 answers in 3, 2, and there you go. Question I is quite a tough one because we end up with C cubed. If we times 4c by c squared, we're basically adding 2 to the power instead of 1. So it goes from c to c squared up to c cubed. And otherwise it's the same idea of putting together your terms. If you got the majority of those right, well done. If not, it might be worth going back and having another look at yesterday's video. But otherwise, ready to carry on, and we're going to look at factorising. So factorising is one of those words that people, when they haven't seen for a while, completely forget what it means because it doesn't really sound much like what it is. But factorising means that we want to put something into brackets. So we've just been expanding brackets. This is the opposite of that. We want to put them back into. And we're going to look at 4 examples here of how this could work. And the basic idea is we're trying to take the largest possible number and the largest amount of letters out of the expression and put that outside of the bracket. So we're basically trying to find what we would call the highest common factor of the terms. So the biggest term that we can divide them both by. So we've got here 24a plus 16b. What's the biggest number we can divide 24 and 16 by? Well, I can divide them by 2, certainly. 4, 6, no, not 6, but 4 certainly. But 8 is actually the biggest number that you can divide these both by. Now, can we divide A and B by anything? No, they're different letters. We can't divide both of them by A. We can't divide both of them by B. So that's all we can do. That's going to be outside of our bracket. Then inside is basically what do we get if we divide these by 8. So if I do 24 divided by 8, I get 3. If I do 16 divided by 8, I get 2. And then obviously we've got to fill in the letters and the signs. Now, if you're not sure if you've done that correctly, you can always expand the brackets out. You could go 8 times 3a, that's 24a, 8 times 2b, that's 16b, and yeah, that is the same as the answer. So you can always use that to check what you've done. What about this second question, x squared plus 9x? Well, there's kind of no numbers that go into any of those. Remember, if we've got x squared, that's the same as 1x squared. So we can theoretically divide these both by 1, but we don't want to put that outside the bracket. It doesn't improve anything. We've still got x squared and 9x. So if we can't divide them by a number, maybe we can divide them by a letter. And they certainly both do have x in them. We've got x squared and we've got x. So let's put an x outside our bracket. And then we're trying to divide these both by x. Now if you do x squared divided by x, you're actually just going to get x, because those two times by each other should get us back to x squared. And if we divide 9x by x, we basically remove the x. We've got a plus 9. Again, you could check that was fine. X times x is x squared. x times 9 is 9x. Yeah, that's exactly what we started with. So that is a correct factorization. Two more examples. In the third one here, we've got 3 terms. So whatever goes outside our bracket has to divide all 3. Now we got numbers first, so 15 and 20 and 10. We can divide 2 of those by 10, but not all of them. But we can divide them all by 5. So we're going to divide them by 5. Any letters they've got in common? Well, we've got an A, an A, an A cubed. So we can take A outside the bracket as well. This one's got a B, nothing else has. This one's got a C, nothing else has. That's the most that can go outside of our bracket. So now we need to do our dividing. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 20 divided by 5 is 4. 10 divided by 5 is 2, and there's going to be a minus there. And then we just need to think about the letters that will be involved. So we're missing the B, the C, and we're missing some of the A cubed. So we're going to have 3B plus 4C. And then what do you think we'll have for a power here? If we divide A cubed by A, it's going to decrease by 1. It's going to go to 2A squared. And again, we could check and expand. And if we expand this, we should end up with exactly what we started with. And we do. And then the last example, 6f squared g minus 14f g squared. Numbers first, what goes into 6 and 14? 2. Letters, they've both got an f, they've both got a g. So f outside the brackets and g outside the brackets. Then what about inside? Well, if we divide 6 by 2, we'll get 3. If you divide 14 by 2, we'll get 7. And then we've got to think about the powers. So we've already got all of the single f's and single g's sorted, so we need to deal with this f squared and this g squared. F squared divided by f is f. G squared divided by g is g. So that should be our final answer. And again, we can check it if we want. If we multiply this, we'll get 6 from the 2 times the 3, f squared from the f times the f, g, which is what we want. And if we multiply these two, we'll get 14 from the 2 times the 7, f from the f times nothing else, and then g squared, which is exactly what we want. So yeah, 4 levels of factorising there. Certainly expect all of you to be able to do the top 2, but those bottom 2 is what we're working towards. Okay, so let's do some practice. So we're going to start off with some relatively simple ones. These are just a case where you normally just have to take out a letter or a number. So I'd like you to do a little 5 by 5 grid and just fill in as many answers as you can in the next, let us say, 10 minutes. When you've done as many as you can, or your 10 minutes are up, unpause and let's have a look at the answers, which I'm going to put up in 3, 2, and there we go. So 25 answers to check there, so obviously pause it, take your time, have a look through. I realised that this question here was kind of cut off. It should have been 6AB plus 9BC plus 3BD, but hopefully the rest of them were fine. Make sure that you're factorising fully, essentially. You're taking out the biggest number, the most amount of letters that you can. And particularly on ones like this, don't just assume that it's always just going to be M plus P or whatever. You don't just take out 6 because it's at the front of the letter. We take out the biggest thing we can divide them both by. Okay, so when you've marked through those, on pause, and let's have a look at some trickier questions. So last big activity for today, we've got here 16 questions. Yeah, I know it repeats like some of the letters. That's okay. And these go, again, starting from fairly straightforward, and they end up with some quite tricky territory. I'd like to see what you can do. I'm going to show the answers in blocks of 4, so pause the video, have a go at 4, unpause, and carry on. Okay, so in 3, 2. So there we go. The first 4, fairly straightforward, just a case of taking out a letter and remembering to have the correct numbers inside the bracket. Okay, let's have a look at the next 4, and I should emphasize, write down the questions and the answers when you're doing these in your book. Don't just be doing them in your head. Okay, so next 4 in 3, 2. A little bit trickier, those ones. So we had to take out both letters and numbers. So we had to take out 2C on question E and 5X on question F, and so on. And again, we had to think about powers. So we have here like a y squared. If we divide that by y, we just get y left over. We had like an x squared on question F. We get an x left over. So again, have a check through. Have a go at the next 4, and when you're ready, unpause in 3, 2. Now those are a bit trickier. So we're taking out a number in most cases, we're taking out a letter, but in E and G and H, we're taking out a power of a letter. That's because we basically want to take out the smallest power that's there. So if you've got a y cubed and a y squared in E, we'll take out the y squared because it's the smallest power between the two, and we'll divide them both by y squared. On H, we had w to the 9 and w to the 7, so we had to divide by the smaller of those, w to the 7. Okay, last 4, you know the drill. Unpause when you're ready to look at the answers. 3, 2, and there we go. Again, some tricky ones there, but I'd say nothing we haven't already addressed. Take out the biggest number you can, take out the most amount of letters you can, and then divide through. Okay, one last little thing to look at. We're going to try and mark some work and see some mistakes, but you're probably done in terms of writing stuff down in your book. So, last thing, let's go. So here we go. There's 3 questions there. There are 3 mistakes on them. Want to see, give yourself a minute if you can spot them, and unpause when you think you've spotted them. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the first mistake is purely that this should be a minus sign in the middle. It's a minus sign in the question. It's not going to expand to give that. The second problem is not the actual math. So if you expand this, you do get 24x squared plus 20x, but this says factorize completely, and that means take out the biggest amount that you can. And we could actually have taken out 4x, not just 4. So you'd need 4x, lots of 6x plus 5. They didn't factorize it completely. And is the same the problem with the second one? No, they've taken out the right thing. It's 5ac. It's this a squared situation. If you think about if you expanded these 2 terms, you get 20. You get a cubed c. And that's slightly different from what they've got. This has got an a squared c. So the mistake was that this should just be 4a plus 6 inside the bracket. So yeah, that's us for today. There is a homework set. Thanks for paying attention. See ya.